Hey there, Adam Small here with Agent Sauce, and this is the Real Estate Marketing Podcast. With me, as always, is Doug Carr.
Hello, sir.
How you doing today, Doug?
Fantastic.
Awesome. So, hey, listen, there's been a lot of stuff in the news lately, and it just seems to get worse and worse, and I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about Facebook. Facebook,
which started from politics, I guess.
Yeah, well, it kind of did, didn't it? Right. The security issues with Facebook, I just read a headline that said that it could, in fact, be that every user on Facebook has had their data compromised in some way, shape, or form. And you got to be a little bit careful with that headline, right? Because what they were really getting at, if you read the article, was they were talking about if you would put your information as public, it could have been scraped, right? So if you had it as private, then it may not have been. And that's an issue to begin with, but the bigger issue is their selling of data and the data privacy in general. So I was hoping we could talk about data privacy today.
Yeah, well, and for clarification,
right,
it's not just if it was public. They actually had if you built a Facebook app at one point, you could get the friends of the person that signed up.
Friends of the person that signed up, right.
And so even if you were private,
right,
they could collect data on you.
Well, I was talking about
the
from
public
a scraping
profile
perspective.
Yeah.
That's what I was talking about.
But this wasn't scraped. This was all done through apps.
The scraping was an entirely different issue, which if your stuff was public, it could have been scraped.
Right.
And that's what I was talking about, and that's what that headline was talking about, but it was really misleading because it required you to have made your stuff public to begin with.
Sure.
Which the intent of making it public is so anybody can see it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, like I said, it was a little bit misleading, but there are some really serious issues going on here with Facebook in general, and privacy as well as, other social media platforms and Google's got issues and other big tech giants are starting to feel some of the brunt of it because Facebook's gaffe here. So wanted to talk a little bit about that and how it relates to agents and marketing in general. So
yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing is consumers are getting absolutely fed up with abuse of data.
Right.
And the problem is that especially in the United States, I think the EU has been ahead of us on the privacy aspects.
They're a bit more stringent, and even with email marketing, which there's some privacy concerns there, but not near as much as social. But they're very much ahead of us on a lot of that.
And here we're pretty much loosey-goosey kind of capitalist.
Right.
However we use data, we put terms of service in there that are basically blanket statements that we can use.
You're giving me this information. I'm going to do what I want with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So.
And so, but people are starting to get tuned into that, even in the case of Facebook, I don't blame them totally. It was people said, yes, I want to install this app and play it on Facebook.
Right.
And yes, I'm going to give you permission to me and all my friends.
Exactly.
And that the system was abused is always a bad thing. But the fact is that consumers got themselves into it.
Consumers agreed to it, and the problem with there are two sides to it, right?
Yeah.
On the one side, you're right. The consumer agreed to it, and the consumer said, "Yeah, sure, I want to do this." And of course, the agreeing to it is a whole different issue because, who reads terms of services anymore?
They never imagined how it would be
40, 50
utilized.
pages long. They, they're legal speak, and you can't understand half of it anyway, right? So, people just click through, and then the other side of it too, at least part that I had read was that, and as an app developer, I know that the requirements were that you not cache certain information and that sort of stuff. And even though it was passed to you, you weren't supposed to do it. But, so the app developers were in fact violating the terms of service on Facebook's side. So Facebook can step back and say, oh, well, we're blameless, but at the same time, you have the memo
that
left
was the door open.
They left the door open, number one, but they also have the memo that was just released last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, where the guy had sent out earlier this summer and it said, or early last summer, and it said something along the lines of, our business is to connect people, and if somebody gets shot because we connected them, it's not really on us. We need to connect them, and that's kind of a paraphrasing. That's the impression that I got from just to kind of make disclaimer there. But, that really doesn't sound good.
Yeah, it is. But, where it comes down to for, folks like real estate agents and brokers and everything else is that you have a wealth of data typically on your clients.
Right.
Sometimes it's down to having their credit card numbers and logins and everything else. And the problem is that, and hopefully I don't embarrass too many of your listeners, but if you're opening a spreadsheet to get your passwords and logins, you're putting yourself and all of your clients at great risk.
Right.
And it's because these, I forget what the stats were on, like, the password, like the password actually being password.
Being the number one password.
Yeah, or like, 26% of break-ins or something like that. Like,
right.
That's the thing, is that these hackers have software that they just brute force and keep trying common passwords and then.
Well, it's a dictionary attack.
Yeah.
And I get notifications on some of my websites every day.
Yeah.
And so it reached a point where I literally sat down and wrote a script, and anytime I get a hack attempt, a dictionary attack, I just block the IP address automatically. But it's every day it happens.
Exactly. And so the problem is that as we're becoming more and more connected with our devices, our fitness watches, our toasters, our
everything, Internet of Things,
everything,
anything and everything that can save data.
Those are gateways, and
exactly.
they're gateways into people's homes. Then the other problem is that new technology is great and it's secure and everything else, but we still have a lot of old technology around that's insecure, and something as simple as if you send a login and password through email,
right,
you might as well just be broadcasting that information out because
to everybody. And then the fact that you probably use the same password for, if not everything, most things, then, you're exposing those, right? And, it's just amazing the amount of data that can be accessed with just one password.
And that's why, I know this is never a sales show for your software, but that's why a CRM is critical. Right, is your CRM is behind SSL, it's secure. You're monitoring for intrusion. You're monitoring for all of that. The data is even encrypted on the database end, and so the someone is going to have a really hard time hacking and trying to pilfer that data out of there.
That's not a challenge to anybody, just so you know. It's true statements, but you're right. We make it as hard as possible for somebody to get in there that shouldn't get in there. We validate all the queries. We have penetration testing. And so it becomes a very secure or quite secure product, for storing data, because it is essential data, and then beyond that, financial information, unless somebody's putting it into like a notes field in our database, we don't store any financial information, even though we bill for credit cards on a monthly basis. Those are stored by our financial institutions and their secure systems,
And so I guess the lesson to any agent that's listening is, if you are dealing with passwords and staff, get a password manager.
Right.
And you can, something like Dashlane or 1Password, you can actually give permission to somebody to use a password
without actually sharing the password itself.
Yeah,
right?
They just auto log in through a browser.
Right, they can't see it. So.
Yeah, and then if you're, obviously if you've got, the CRM, to keep personal information about these people in, put it in there. Don't sit there and put it in a notepad on your desktop.
Right.
Think about everything that you do. Do you have to log in through a secure channel in order to either save that information or get that information? If you don't, then you're at risk. And then, and then, like you said, if you're using weak passwords, which password managers really help out there too.
Exactly.
I don't know any of my passwords. I know my master password to my Dashlane account.
Right.
And then I have double authentication. So even if someone knew my master password, it would still text message my phone and say, here's what it is. And,
right.
And so, I can't say it enough. All of those things, if you're dealing with people's personal information via electronic means, everything that you do and save should be through something. Because if you're caught, it's not a matter of it's beyond the embarrassment of getting caught. It's the if they get into your credit and they get into your, start charging stuff to you and everything else, and the problems that causes, and arguing with credit card companies and trying to get that money back. Then imagine with your customers, having them go through that and how that makes you look, because someone was able to get into your email and capture some of that information.
I was going to bring up is plain and simple. Even if it's a huge hassle for you, it's still very much a trust issue. You've lost that whole factor of trust with your customer base if they're hacked because of you.
And so to save 5 seconds on something instead of going through a login,
right?
You're putting your career at risk. That's just not worth it.
It's absolutely not.
And then of course nowadays it's public, and eventually there's going to be legislation that you have to make it public.
Exactly.
These guys are going to get sued. I forget the latest one that MyFitnessPal, I think it was.
Oh yeah, just last week or something like that. Yeah.
But they just made it. Just made it public, even though it's been out for a couple months.
Right.
And they're going to get their butt sued off for that, because you're going to have to tell people immediately that there's been a hack, a break-in and stuff. And then even a worse point here is you may not even know that you were hacked. If someone has your Gmail login and password and you don't have dual authentication, they can go in there, get all your information, maybe even add a blind CC.
Well, and that's actually a really good point, right? Because you're seeing that a lot these days with closings, where the agent's email gets hacked and they don't realize it. So the hacker sits there and waits until there's a closing, and then the day of the closing, they pretend to be the agent and send an email to the customer, to the buyer, saying, hey, transfer your money via wire to this account. And then the buyer loses, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, and then they can't buy the house because they don't have the deposit.
Yeah.
So
and it's just because someone spoofed the email.
Well, they spoofed the email, but they had to get into the agent's email address to begin with, their email account to begin with, because they know who the buyer was, they know when the closing date was, and they pretended to be the agent and sent them a message the day of, and of course the buyer's like, oh, came from the right address, and it's a couple hours, I'm just going to do it so I can get the closing going, and then they're out tens of thousands of dollars, and some of them do manage to recover the money, but most don't, and it's just a shame, because somebody's losing out on buying their dream home, right? And
and so people know email is pure raw, so whatever you put in email can be read.
Right.
SMS
is open
to an extent.
It's I wouldn't trust it to be secure, right?
It's not encrypted, but it's difficult to read, right?
Right, and it depends on how it's being sent. Like with our SMS, from us to the carrier is terminated. It's over secure. It's over SSL. And then so that's good. But then from the carrier to the phone, I can't guarantee it, because I don't control that. We don't send any secure messages anyway, anything that requires security. But I don't know that.
Well, I'm just saying to people that they go, well, okay, email's not secure, so I'll use text
SMS.
message.
I don't know that. I
you don't
do
know
that either.
Exactly.
So,
And then of course websites. Even if your personal website has
if all you're doing is collecting an email address, just run SSL.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So.
And that's what I was just going to say was no matter what data you're collecting, I wouldn't put data into a website that wasn't SSL.
Right.
And I wouldn't have a website. And nowadays SSL comes free with a lot of the hosting packages out there.
Let's Encrypt in particular. You don't even have to have a hosting package with them. You can just get free SSL from them, and they're actually it's very easy to set up and use. So there's no excuse these days not to have SSL on your website.
And that's probably about it from a communication standpoint. Some people for there are those times that you run into problems where you have to, you just are like, oh, I can't do this. I gotta send this information. There's a thing called salami slicing. Have you ever heard of this?
Oh yeah, I've heard the term.
It's a funny term, but it's send it a piece at a time.
Right.
So maybe send half your login by text message and the other half send it by email.
Right.
And so the whole idea is that if somebody's monitoring one thing, they can't get all of it.
Exactly.
And that's a pretty interesting, way to do it as well. And the other one too is, I said it before, but dual authentication. Look at everything that you have.
Two-factor authentication is what that's called in a lot of areas, and like Doug said, anything and everything that you have, your investment accounts, your bank account, your,
everything. I have everything.
Yeah, and anything that you can, anywhere you can, even your domain accounts like with GoDaddy or whatever, they offer two-factor authentication. Use it. It's a slight pain in the butt. But it's worth it, because otherwise you could end up losing domains, you could end up losing money out of your accounts, you could end up losing, your email being hacked, all sorts of stuff.
Just think about anywhere where you have a lot of information, and if someone was able to get to that, what would that do to your customers?
Exactly.
And you don't want to be on the front page of the news, that you got hacked and 14 of your clients then got hacked and everything else.
Exactly.
It's just not worth it.
Right. So.
And you get those processes in place nowadays, and like I said, everywhere where you record or look up data, make sure that it's secure.
Right.
Get those processes in nowadays, and it's going to keep getting easier. The tools will get better and better over time, and it'll be quicker and quicker. I started using Dashlane a couple years ago because of our clients, and at first it was and I was grunting and groaning and everything else. Now it's it takes me a second to pop it up and get the password and log in.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Any other thoughts on privacy there, Doug? All right, well,
that's it.
Guys, stay secure. Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. If you have any other questions, want to learn more, check us out at agentsauce.com or email us at info@agentsauce.com. Thanks and have a great day.